Hey guys, welcome back to the Prehistoric Life podcast. I'm your host, Eric Crawford, and today we have another interview with Sky Walker from the Dinomancer. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, that's it. It's like
All right.
necromancer, just dinosaurs.
I mean, fair enough. So there's her Instagram. Please go check her out. She has a lot of amazing content. Um, so would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So hi everybody. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me. So as he just said, I'm Sky, the Dinomancer. So like dinosaurs with necromancy. Thought the idea was pretty cool. Um, and I'm a paleontologist. I'm mostly field based. So I'm a field technician for my organization called Elevation Science. And I'm also a science communicator. So in the summer, I work as a field technician, and then in the off season, I'm the science communication manager. So it's pretty much dinosaurs all year round.
It's not work if you do what you love.
Exactly. I say that all the time.
So I mean, the basic question that I ask everybody to start off an interview is, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Oh man, this is a really tough one. I do get asked this one a lot, and I always tell people I have multiple favorites, but the one that springs to my mind the most is Maiasaura.
My
Mostly because I'm a herbivore person, and I especially love Maiasaura because of all the information that we have because of that dinosaur. Um, I'm very interested in just inferences on dinosaur behavior. So, Maiasaura was one of the first dinosaurs to really give us a good glimpse that dinosaurs weren't just these lumbering idiots. They were, family based, and they took care of one another, and they were smart enough to take care of their own. Plus, Maiasaura was the first dinosaur in space. So I like telling people that little tidbit.
It's an interesting fact. I didn't even know that. So
Yeah, they
now I
sent,
do.
I think, a baby Maiasaura limb bone, and then I think a fragment of an eggshell up in space. So
Wonder what the talk through at NASA that happened there.
I have no idea.
Hey,
I
you guys
would have
mind if
loved
we
to have
send
been
a?
a fly on the wall for that, though.
Hey, you guys mind if we send a dinosaur bone up into space?
Yep.
Sure.
I
I mean,
guess. I mean, we're sending a whole bunch of other crap up there anyway. So
sure. I mean, we got other stuff we're sending up there. Might as well look at random fossils too. So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, you gave us a little rundown at what you do. I mean, where are you based out of? Where are you?
So for most of the year, I live in southern Mississippi, so on the Gulf Coast. But my field work is based in Montana, in the Bighorn Basin.
Fair enough. So, Mississippi, not that far from me. I'm in South Carolina. So, um,
Oh, nice. Yeah, I have one of my best friends lives in North Carolina. Um, so
I've always wanted
we're
to
kind of
visit
all over the
Mississippi.
place.
I've always wanted to visit Mississippi. I've heard there's some cool stuff there. So,
Yeah, I'm hoping to do some field work down here at some point, just to kind of dip my toe into other kinds of field work if possible.
so you said you're in the Longhorn Basin formation. Is that what era is mainly prevalent there?
So we're in the Bighorn Basin. And it's a really famous area because it is so geologically pronounced that you can actually see it from space. And it's made up of multiple mountain ranges that date back, millions and millions of years. But the main areas that we work in are the Morrison Formation, so Jurassic, 150 million years, things like that.
So, what do you commonly find in that area?
We find a lot. I myself have worked on Diplodocus, Camarasaurus, Allosaurus, some possible Apatosaurus specimens too. Um, And we do have some mystery dinos that we're working on right now. We're not quite sure what they are. We have a mystery sauropod, actually a couple of mystery sauropods, and a mystery theropod. So we're hoping to get some more information on those
Some.
next year.
So are they
But
like new?
a lot of your classic Jurassic ones.
A lot of the classic Jurassic dinosaurs. I love the Jurassic period, primarily just because
Yeah,
Allosaurus is my favorite dinosaur. Um,
it is one of my favorites as well.
and
Now, I love T Rex, don't get me wrong, but it's in the spotlight a lot, and I feel like Allosaurus needs a little bit more love.
I mean, I've always just loved Allosaurus because from a young age, I saw the Ballad of Big Al special,
Yes, yes.
and that just got me hooked
Hmm.
on Allosaurus. So I've just been like going crazy for Allosaurus my whole life. And
Yep, I totally understand
a
that.
couple years back, I visited the Dinosaur National Park and got this replica of a juvenile Allosaurus hand fossil,
Oh,
which is just something
that's
that
awesome.
it's me and my brother have this little ongoing joke about how every paleontologist has a centerpiece. That's my centerpiece.
Oh, yeah, I can
So,
understand that. Yeah, that is pretty sick.
so, I mean, Allosaurus is just one of my personal favorites.
Yep, and rightfully so.
I mean, I don't think it gets enough love. So
No, it doesn't. I think a lot of the time it's overshadowed by, you know, T
T
Rex and things
Rex
like
and
that. I keep my fingers crossed that one day we'll find us a Ceratosaurus out there because I love
that would be so
Allosaurus,
cool.
but it's very common, especially out where we work. I
I would
think
imagine so.
because a few years ago, my team excavated one that we call Weird Al.
Weird
Um,
Al.
so not Big Al, not Little Al, but Weird Al. He's called Weird Al because parts of the skull were found in completely different parts of the quarry.
Oh, what?
So, because we do our excavations in grid systems, so there was one found in the north end, in the south end, east. So had to be pieced back
That's
together.
that's definitely not common for skulls, I would assume.
No, I mean it's already uncommon enough to find the skull, period. But to have it, scattered all over the place is just even weirder. So they said, you know what, we're going to name him Weird Al. So, and almost the entire skeleton was retrieved. So that was our big thing for a while, and then last year we had some participants that were out with us for a week. There were these two awesome ladies named Meg and Margaretta, and we send prospecting teams out just if they want to go looking for new sites and things like that. So they were out and they were having no luck finding anything. I mean, they would find tiny little bits of float and things like that. But they came back and they had these chunks of pretty rock that they found, and they come back to me and they're like, we're back from prospecting and we didn't find anything, but look, we did find these really cool rocks with crystals in them. And they wanted to show me. So I was like, oh, cool. But then they handed one to me and I was like, oh no. Because I looked at it, immediately knew that it was a dinosaur bone. And it was a piece of, I can't remember what part of the body it was, but it was a limb bone. It was an Allosaurus limb bone that they had just handed me. And the hollow part inside the bone was just filled with calcite crystals. It was beautiful. And I totally understood why they thought that it was just a rock. But I handed it back to them. I said, you should not have picked this up because
Where did
we
you get this from?
exactly, yes. So that was
Bring
my
me
next
to the
question. I was
location now.
yeah, like, do you think that you could lead us back to where you found this? And these poor ladies, I felt so bad, but we needed to find it. And they were just like, oh my gosh, I don't know. We didn't mark it with anything. And so the next few hours were spent looking for that site. And thank goodness they found another chunk from where it came from. Um, And long story short, that site became called M&M, kind of like the candy, but it's for Meg and Margareta. Um, and
That's
so
slightly different.
it is an Allosaurus. We confirmed this year. But the thing is, when I was working at that site this year, I found a femur, and it's a partial femur. But the thing is, they had found part of the femur last year during the initial discovery, and it's much bigger.
So you
Uh,
found two
and
different femurs?
yeah, so we're wondering because the bigger femur, according to our professional anatomist, he's like, yeah, that's definitely Allosaurus. Like, there's nothing else that it could be. But the small one that I found, we don't know because it's much smaller. So I wish I had a proper scale for you, but the piece of the larger femur that's definitely Allosaurus is like this long, and the one that I found is like this.
Huh.
So either we have an adult and a juvenile, or we have an adult Allosaurus and something else completely. So
It could
I don't
be
know.
with that. It could be something that Allosaurus hunted too.
It
It's very
could, it could.
possible.
It's still definitely a theropod because you can see the infilling of calcite crystals, but the much smaller size is kind of freaking us out a little bit, I guess.
I mean, it. I know it probably wasn't common, but Allosaurus did fight Ceratosaurus a bit. They did fight for territory. They did fight for food,
Mm-hmm.
as most creatures do. It
Right?
could be that, or it could be a juvenile, which is just as exciting. I mean, I love Ceratosaurus too. I think the crests on its head are just just that like the look of it is just stunning.
Yes, and they're much more rare. So finding something like that would be pretty revolutionary for us.
They're also really small. I
Yeah,
I
yeah,
always because I've always like seen them and I'm like, okay, well it looks like one of these larger theropods, but it's like the size of a full grown human in
yeah,
height.
yeah.
It's way
Definitely
longer and
not
way heavier.
not as big as you would expect them to be. And similarly, I just saw my first Carnotaurus mount, and it was not nearly as large as I was expecting.
They're small too.
Yeah,
And
and I knew that they had these kind of small, like stumpy, like skulls,
yeah,
but I wasn't expecting them to, be not much bigger than us, really.
I got a little Carnotaurus skull here.
Oh, that's pretty sick.
I mean, it's so weird because I feel like it has something to do with Jurassic Park 3. And it might just be me that like shaped my idea of the Ceratosaurus because you see it and it's looking down at the group and you're like, okay, well this thing is clearly big, and they
Right.
probably base it on some sort of fossil data. But I mean, I guess they could have grown that big, but that probably would have been very rare.
I would say so. Um, it's funny that you say Jurassic Park because usually when I think of Carnotaurus, I think of the version from Disney's Dinosaur.
That one too. That one
That's
was
the one that
massive.
really shaped it for me, and they used to scare the bejesus out of me when I was a kid.
I always found it weird in that movie that all the other dinosaurs could talk except for the Carnotaurus.
Yeah, I guess they thought that maybe it would
But it
humanize it too much.
but it also worked.
Yeah, the
You
fact that
actually felt a
they couldn't
sense of
talk was a lot scarier, I think.
because you also felt like a sense of they're being hunted by some kind of actual animal.
Mhm.
And also I find it weird because Carnotaurus didn't actually have that powerful of a bite force.
Now, is there a recorded possible bite force for that?
I um by the power of Google.
I mean, it's okay if you don't know. I hadn't read one anywhere.
3,342 newtons, which is still a lot.
Yeah, it's
Like,
pretty.
that's
It's
still
still pretty
like,
substantial.
I mean, it could still bite your head off with minimal effort. So, but like compared to like other dinosaurs, it wasn't really. Well, it's also, I mean, you compare it to like a lion, it's like you're like, okay, it's a giant lizard that towers over this lion. But if you compare it to like another dinosaur, you're like, okay, well, Carnotaurus wasn't really that. But you're like, I don't. Where do you even find Carnotaurus? Because I think I did an episode on it a
I feel like
while back.
it's more of a European dinosaur. I could be mistaken.
South America.
Oh, South America. Never mind.
I got my own little journal where I do my own research, so, which I
Smart.
use. So you said you had a mystery theropod and sauropod.
So yeah, the mystery that well,
So is
okay.
that
So I guess we had multiple mystery theropods. One of them was the one I just told you
the
about.
small?
Yeah. And then the other one kind of goes along with one of the mystery sauropods. Um, so one of the bigger cases, I'll start with that one. So we have this massive sauropod vertebra that I believe was discovered in 2018, but it is so massive that we weren't able to get it out of the ground until this year.
Wow.
So last year we put a top jacket on it just as kind of like a preemptive, protective layer around it. Managed to get it undercut and flipped and bottom jacketed this year, and it just made its way back to our partner museum in Cincinnati, and we call it Megavert. And I don't even begin to know how much this thing weighs just by itself. But let's just say I would compare it to about the size of like an 18-wheeler tire. This thing is
Wow.
massive. It is possibly the biggest bone that I've ever seen in the ground. And it's even got most of its neural processes preserved. I think I've even seen some traces of the neural canal. But the thing is massive, and we know it's a sauropod. We just don't know what it is. But there hasn't been any other evidence of that animal at this site. There's nothing else that huge that would correlate with it. So I guess we're just going to have to keep going because
If
we're
it's
not done with that site, not even close.
if it's the Jurassic and it's that big, I mean, wow. I mean, I don't even. Do you think it could possibly be a new species or?
There is always that possibility. We never write off the possibility of a new species, especially with the theropod I just told you about, because we always tell people, okay, it could be a small Allosaurus, it could be Ceratosaurus, could be something completely different that we don't know about yet. There's always that possibility. But we're just going to have to keep digging in that area. And now that Megavert is back in the lab with our paleo lab manager, she's going to prepare it, and that way it can be properly studied. So I guess we'll see.
Because I know Camarasaurus was pretty prevalent during the Jurassic period in that area. But if you're saying it's like an 18-wheeler, Camarasaurus wasn't that big.
No.
No.
So this is a bit much for Camarasaurus. Now, we do have a Camarasaurus about, well, no. We'll say a couple hundred yards away from that site, nicknamed Jens. And it's a little juvenile Camarasaurus we've been working on for a couple of years. And the verts that we've pulled out of there are only maybe about that big.
Yeah, not.
Yeah, so teeny tiny. But then again, like we're pretty sure it's a juvenile anyway.
So,
but yeah, so we got that going for us for a mystery sauropod. And then our other mystery sauropod, I don't even really have any guesses on it. Much smaller than Megavert, but it was discovered we'll say it was technically discovered this year. But in that area, it's actually just down the hill from where Megavert was discovered. Um, so for years, people had been coming out with us and finding these giant chunks of bone, and you can tell that these bones have been exposed to the sun for a while because they're a little sun bleached. But nobody has ever actually found anything that they would go to. So this year, I took a small team out there and we were just kind of poking around in the area just to see if we could find anything below the surface. And lo and behold, we did. So I found a set of partially, we'll say semi articulated pubes, so parts of the hips. And they were just kind of sitting right next to each other in the hillside like this. They just mirrored each other. It was so awesome. And they were a little damaged. There were a lot of sagebrush in the area, so the roots had kind of done some damage to the bone. But all in all, it was in pretty good shape. And I went back to camp that day and I told my boss, and I said, "Hey, I think we have another sauropod." And he looked at me and he goes, "Great, that's just what we need, another sauropod."
Because sauropods are so massive, I assume they take several years to excavate.
It depends. So I have yet to complete an excavation, like a full-on excavation myself. But that's because most of the sites that we have just have so much in them that it does take multiple seasons. But I know in the past, my organization has completed excavation in 1 calendar year. So not too bad at all.
But
We've had an ongoing excavation at our Mother's Day site, which is all Diplodocus. That excavation has been going on since 1994.
I would assume if it's just a bunch of Diplodocus, it would take forever.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
You just find part of the vertebrae, like, we're going to keep going that way till we reach a skull, and we're going to keep going that way till we reach a small part of the tail.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, I mean, we all know that articulation is kind of a rare thing,
Rare.
and that's definitely the case here. We found some articulated stuff. Like just last year, we flipped a Diplodocus femur and found some articulated caudal vertebrae up underneath it, and the neural spines were just kind of laid flat on top of the sandstone, but they were in a line, just the way they were when the dinosaur was alive. Yeah, so it's very, very cool. We have almost no articulation at that site because the bones were transported in a mudslide, so they all just kind of got jumbled up. So to find them still in a line like that is basically a miracle.
Which probably means that whatever happened, the dinosaur died and then fell into it before it decomposed.
So with our Mother's Day site, that's kind of sort of what happened. So the current leading hypothesis for that is that there was this herd of juvenile Diplodocus, and they were out and about. They were on their own, and they were looking for water at the local watering hole. But the thing is, that area experienced seasonal monsoonal rains, and that year the rains were late, and the dinosaurs died of dehydration waiting for the rain, and they all died together in that same area. And they just laid there desiccating in the sun for a while. And that's actually why we find skin imprints at this site as well, which is really cool. And then when the rains finally did show up, it caused a mudslide and transported the dinosaurs to where they are now. So they're all just kind of a jumbled up, muddy mess. And that's why we'll find a femur here, we'll find a humerus here, and verts kind of scattered around in here. And just, you never know what you're going to find or where.
So for those of you watching who Hang on. There we go. I got this miniature Diplodocus skeleton. Very tiny.
Oh, that's so cool.
And that's just my page on Diplodocus. You can't read
Wow.
any of it. But I'll send you a picture later.
Yeah, that's so cool. You'll have to tell me where you got that skeleton.
I'll have to do some digging before I figure that out.
It's okay.
But, so I actually don't remember as of right now, but I'll figure it out. But I mean, there's a lot of sites like that where, because I guess like some predators would probably herd smaller herds like off a cliff or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure there are a bunch of sites where it's just piles of dead animals,
Right.
which is kind of crazy to think about. Because then, I mean, I always think about that. Like, what do you do if you like come across just like an actual pile of just like dead Stegosaurus? It's like you're like, huh, there's like a femur here, but there's a skull right under the femur.
Yeah, stuff like that happens, especially at our sites all the time. Now, if you're, say, an Allosaurus, like right after it happens, you think, okay, it's dinner time. And that might have been the case at Mother's Day as well. There haven't really been any signs of predation or scavenging or anything, except for the fact that we found a couple of Allosaurus teeth at the site. And I can probably count on both hands how many compared to the almost 3,000 bones we found at Mother's Day. So
because I'm sure
they were definitely in the area.
I'm sure they were, because the last I was about to say person, but it was 3 people I interviewed, the Hell Creek Hooligans. They're out in the Hell Creek Formation, so they mainly deal with Cretaceous creatures, not Jurassic, but I'm sure principles are very similar between them. One of them was like, yeah, I've found like 4 or 5 Triceratops skulls, but one thing that we've never really found is Triceratops feet, which I thought was very random, but it also, if you start to think about it, it kind of makes sense, because the head would be so hard to like get off of the actual body. But like you say, you take the leg or the foot, the T-Rex could just rip that off without much effort, and then they just drag it off. Because the dude before that, which is their father, that I interviewed, he was an actual cowboy, so he'd find like a dead cow that coyotes or something killed, and the limbs would be missing, and he'd have bones from them just scattered around. So I'm sure you'll find like a whole leg in one place, but you won't find anything else. And I'm sure there was something like Allosaurus, or even a group of Ceratosaurus, or what other predators are in that time, coming and ripping limbs off, because that's easier than the whole head. I mean,
Mm-hmm. And that is something interesting to take into account, especially if dinosaurs are laying there dead for a certain amount of time. And it's interesting that you brought up the feet, because there is a hypothesis about a dinosaur that my team has dug up in the past called Suwasia. That's not the correct pronunciation. I'm just used to saying it like that. It's from the Crow language, because where we dig is on the ancestral lands of the Crow peoples. I think it's correctly pronounced Suwase, and it means first thunder in that language. And it's a really small sauropod. Not sure if you've ever heard of it. I never had until I started working for my organization. But just a few feet away from where that dinosaur was found, an Allosaurus was found, humorously named Urinator. And I can tell you the story about that. But the thing is with this Suwasia is the legs were missing. So they had the hips and everything, but they didn't have the legs. And there was this hypothesis that the Allosaurus probably ate the feet because of I can't remember the proper terms for it, but long story short, that the predators knew that the feet would have more protein in it, so they would eat that first. So it's just like a running hypothesis that Allosaurus had a foot fetish.
I'm sure there were dinosaurs that ate feet. I mean,
I mean, probably, but
I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, also if you think about it, the foot probably does, because I mean, with a skull, even like the human skull, I mean, there's only like a thin layer of muscle between the
right.
skin, the skull, and then the brain would be so hard to get to, so it wouldn't
Hmm.
really be worth it to try to go after and consume dinosaurs.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Like, even
So
if you're
something
not a
like,
ceratopsian or anything like that, there's not a whole lot here to go after. All the sweet meat is below the shoulders.
I mean, like
So,
their thighs probably would have been thighs and like bicep area would probably have been massive to support their weight.
hmm.
Their bodies, of course, were probably fairly big. So that would probably be what was targeted.
Yeah, I would think so. I think they would have targeted more meatier parts, and then um, probably would have saved something like the feet for last, just as kind of like I'll take my vitamins.
I mean, you never know. I mean, but like I said, I mean, modern predators probably do it too. I mean, you can't carry the whole dead animal; it might be too heavy. Like especially with something like an Allosaurus and a sauropod. Allosaurus was a giant dinosaur. Surely wasn't weak, stronger than probably any human out there. But a sauropod is also several tons.
Yeah.
Fairly impossible to move without actual, at least group effort, without like 800 Allosaurus trying to pull one away. And at that point, it's not worth it.
Right. And I could buy that an adult Allosaurus or maybe even a juvenile could go after like a young sauropod that had just kind of strayed away from the herd, or like a sick dinosaur or something like
I'm
that.
sure they heard
But
those off.
yeah,
Mm.
and there's no doubt about that in my mind. But I would think that if there was a group of Allosaurus looking for their dinner or whatever, I don't think that their first target would be an
An
adult
adult,
sauropod. I
healthy.
think they would have to be pretty desperate to go after something that large.
So I honestly, because one of the bigger debates is if some of these larger theropods were scavengers or actual hunters. Personally, I think saying one or the other is kind of dinosaur crap, for lack of better words. I if it's survival of the fittest and you're an Allosaurus and you come across an shot like an entire dead Diplodocus, you're not going to be like, "Oh, I need to go hunt." You're going to be like, "Free meal."
Yeah, exactly. I like the idea that
But
predatory dinosaurs were opportunistic.
you also have like 3 or 4 Allosaurus, and they see maybe an older Diplodocus on its last leg, slowly behind the herd. They're going to be like, "We're not going to wait for it to die. We haven't got all day. We're hungry." So they're
Yeah,
going to probably tackle it down or something, knock it over, then kill it and eat it. And one of the things that
yeah,
I
yeah.
actually found in some of my research, and you could probably call my bluff on this because I don't actually know how accurate it is, but it said that Allosaurus ate like some birds of prey, so it probably didn't even completely kill its prey before it started to eat them. So for like smaller dinosaurs, it probably held them down and then just started to eat it because
Yeah,
I'm sure several creatures did that because it's like they don't really care about the idea of mercy. They don't have the
no,
idea of that kind of.
I wouldn't think so, unfortunately. I think that you're probably right. I think that they wouldn't have wasted any time, waiting for the poor thing to, fall asleep, uh, and things like that. So, I think they would have just taken what they wanted or
All right,
needed and
you're
then
right.
called it a day.
Especially on something large like a sauropod, because to like actually kill a sauropod, because I mean for like a human to make them go to sleep, they need to lose like what, like 2 pints of blood,
Yeah.
and then which is already a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But for something like a sauropod, having it bleed out, you'd have to like completely make it lose all of its limbs,
Yeah.
which and
It
then
would
it
have
would
to go
take like
through
a
a
couple
lot.
hours.
A massive undertaking to take one of those down. So
They
I
probably
think it
were
would
just like,
be
if
a
it's
whole
going to lie
process.
here, I mean,
Yeah, and it's not going to go down without a fight either.
oh no.
So
I mean, because everybody sees these sauropods as just these gentle, giant, grazing creatures that were probably fairly dumb, but they weren't. I mean, they could kill apex predators with
yeah, I'm actually
fairly
one
easily.
of I'm actually one of like the number one herbivore defenders. I posted a video a while ago, just kind of, poking a little fun at people who say, herbivores are boring or useless or whatever. But I mean, think about, things like cows and horses and, elephants and giraffes,
Yeah, I
things like
mean,
that today.
a
Like, they're
lion
pretty
comes and
dangerous.
a lion comes, an elephant doesn't just roll over and die and just accept
Yes,
its fate.
exactly.
It's going
And
to try to chase it off. And I think of think about like a sauropod fighting. Allosaurus, it was big, but you look at it next to like a Diplodocus. A Diplodocus, all it has to do is step on the Allosaurus and it's game over.
right, or like just a little whip of the tail and it's probably game over.
Because Apatosaurus was thought that the end of its tail could create like a sonic boom whenever it snapped like that. And it's like that end of the tail hits you, it's game over. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, even, with or without the sonic boom, I think the force of that alone would be enough to at least knock you off your
I
feet.
think that sonic boom there just shows how fast it can go to like, I mean, if it's not killing the predator, I mean, it's giving it a very painful rest of its life. So
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention, like herbivores were seldom alone. So, they would gang up on anything that was coming after, one of their own,
got that
which
herd
strength
mentality.
in numbers honestly scares me more than just a lone dinosaur.
And I mean, yes, you catch a Diplodocus on its own, and there's 4 or 5 Allosaurus. It's probably not walking away from it.
Probably not.
At least not in one piece.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going to be torn off. It's probably going to be limping. But it's also not going. It's not just going to roll over and accept its fate.
Mm-mm.
These creatures have that bird and reptile mind. So it's not one or the other. I feel like it would have been like an in between.
Mm-hmm.
So it had the basic instincts of sleep, eat, drink, reproduce. But they also got that fight or flight in it. So I mean, worst comes to worst, I'm using all 10 tons of my body and I'm stepping on somebody.
Yeah, yeah. And frankly I would too if I were that size. But I also think that, especially with animals like dinosaurs, instincts like that are pretty situational. So I don't think they would have just one thing that they would do in, this situation. And I think they were smart enough to be able to, figure out, okay, which of my skills is best used in this scenario for me to get out alive.
Because one of the later episodes I did last month, because oddly enough, I did sauropod month in October, which I did nothing but sauropods, except for one day where I did something on T-Rex, because everybody loves T-Rex. So
The
did a
scandal.
little something. But Brontomerius,
Oh my gosh.
the hip muscles were so thought to be well developed that it could have like, the two debates were like, oh well, maybe it lived on a mountain, maybe it needed strong hips to take how many ever tons up a mountain, or it could have kicked predators. But I'm like, Why is it one or the other? Why wouldn't it be both? Why couldn't it be both? Yes, it probably needed to travel up mountains, but you get a predator coming. It's like, I mean, it's like it's like a karate person fighting like a 2-year-old. I mean, you got one with like jacked legs, and the other tiny little predator runs up. It's gonna be like kick. All right, you're out. Who's next?
I love Brontosaurus because one, I'm a big sauropod fan. Two, the name means thunder thighs, and so since I discovered the existence of Brontosaurus, all of my flash drives are named Brontosaurus.
Really?
Yes,
All of them.
all of them.
It's like a throwaway joke. You're like, hey, go check the Brontomirius file. They're all named Brontomirius. Which one?
That's always how I know, that they're mine.
Probably not that. But like, I mean, I'm sure if it kicked its predators, they had a very, if they didn't die instantly, they had a very painful rest of their existence with something broken. They're probably not walking away.
Something broken, something bruised.
And if they're on a mountain, it's probably fell down a mountain.
Mm.
I mean, because it was in Utah in the Cedar Mountain Formation.
That sounds correct.
So it's like, if it was in like a mountain formation, I'm sure it was going up and down mountains.
With legs like that, I'm sure.
So I'm sure it probably over time evolved to develop more muscle on their legs to be able to take them up the mountain. But also, like, if like I start hiking up mountains every single day and my legs get massive, and then somebody messes with me, I'm like, I'm gonna kick them.
Yeah, just
I'm gonna
donkey
kick them
kick
as hard
them.
as I can. Also, I feel like hadrosaurs have been greatly mistreated. Like,
Yes,
the hadrosaur name has definitely been dragged through the mud.
it has. Mostly by theropod people, I've noticed, because there's just this really common public view that hadrosaurs are just cannon fodder for things like T-Rex, and that's not true. But I mean, if you go to a museum, like at the Natural History Museum of LA, wonderful museum, but the hadrosaurs that I saw there, the poor things were being eaten by T-Rex, and they didn't actually have any mounts of their own. They were just accessories to the T-Rex display. And let me think. I think Stegosaurus was the only standing herbivore mount that I saw, and even then, it was facing off with an Allosaurus. So the herbivores always get the short end of the stick, and I'd like to one day be able to see a different scenario for them, maybe.
There were, I mean, you've probably seen it, but on my Instagram, I mean, like, Protoceratops, you look at it and you're like, yeah, I could probably kick it over if I needed to. But also, they weren't one to mess with. I mean, they were like killing velociraptors with like out effort. I mean, they were fighting off like the fighting dinos. Didn't they find like 2 velociraptors? One of them had been like killed by the Protoceratops. I mean, like,
now that I don't know. I mean, it's possible,
like, but even the tiny ones are killing things. They're all dangerous.
Right. And I mean, people think of these dinosaurs as, defenseless and useless and, just,
They
like I
were
said
very
before,
much
cannon
so
fodder for these predators. And that's not true. There's no way that it could biologically be true, because even though like they don't have the sharp teeth, they don't have, like 2 like strong, agile legs, instead of 4, but they had what worked for them evolutionary,
like,
in
granted,
evolutionary standpoint. So, I mean, there's a reason that they stuck around for that long, is because they were able to adapt and survive.
Like, granted, I don't think hadrosaurs were really the ones to go and try to stand up toe to toe to the big predators, but
No.
they definitely weren't just like, all right, there's a T-Rex in the bush over there. Guess it's my time.
Yeah,
I mean, they
no.
definitely weren't doing that. And I feel like that why they're the vocal ones is because instead of adapting to have the horns of a Triceratops or the back plates and Thagomizer of the Stegosaurus, they evolved the idea of communication to try to watch out for each other. So one would look off, see a T-Rex, and then all the other ones hear this one screaming about something, and then they're like, oh, wait, yeah, there's a big predator over there. Let's go that way. let's not walk to it.
Yeah. So they were smart enough to be able to defend themselves and each other and, just be able to look out for one another and survive. And I feel like those are traits that often get overlooked.
Like, there was one, what was it called? Shanatungosaurus. I probably horribly mistrued its name.
I can't pronounce that dinosaur's name, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think it's that one. It might have been a different one, but it was found in China, and it was thought to be as big as like a T-Rex, like the same size.
Yeah, it was definitely massive. I
yeah.
can't remember the exact, dimensions on it. But that video I told you about before where I was just kind of poking fun at, hadrosaur haters, there were so many people that showed up in the comments saying, again, I can't pronounce that dinosaur's name, but Shatungosaurus or whatever wants to know your location.
Like Parasaurolophus, everybody sees it in like the Jurassic Park movie, and it's like, oh, well, it's not that big. I mean, of course, it's bigger than a human, but this T-Rex is towering over it, and I'm like, no, so Parasaurolophus was massive.
Yeah,
I mean, it was probably huge. It wasn't as big, but it was close to the size of like T-Rex, and T-Rex probably was like, all right, it's a mama T-Rex with like its two children. Or maybe a mama and a dada, and then maybe like an older child at best. Parasaurolophus was like, all right, it's me and like 18 other people. Or 18 other Parasaurolophus. Who you want to mess with? I mean, and we all have each other's back, so I feel like they were definitely the ride or die dinosaur.
Yeah, like the T-Rex is like, you and what army? And the Parasaurolophus is like, well, now that you mention it.
Now that you mention it, here's my army. I mean, and like, one of the things that I saw somebody say was that they poked fun at the Stegosaurus brain cavity.
Yep.
Even in the Jurassic Park book, they were like, this Stegosaurus is kind of dumb. But I'm like, yeah, but that tail kind of says otherwise.
Yeah.
Maybe not on like an IQ scale, it wasn't smart, but I mean, it definitely knew how to survive.
Yeah, I'm not saying like, it could have gone and gotten its PhD or anything.
No,
but
it also wasn't too dumb to survive.
Right, like it could mess you up.
They did several times, and funny enough, the Thagomizer wasn't named by an actual scientist, but due to like someone making a joke about Stegosaurus's tail.
Yeah, it was in
the name was like Thag something.
Yeah.
But they're like, all right, we're gonna call it the Thagomizer. It's like everybody just stuck to it, and they're like, sure, why not?
Yep. I remember the Thagomizer first, became a thing in oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of the comics, but it came out you probably know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah, I just the name is escaping me. But yeah, and lots of people don't even know that the Thagomizer even has a name.
It's very unknown. Because I'll be just talking to someone, and I'll be like, oh yeah, Gary Larson in Jest in the Far Side comics.
Far Side, yes, that's it.
There it was. In 1982, a group of cavemen taught by a caveman lector that the spike on the Stegosaurus tail were named after the large Thag Simons. And so they went Thagomizer. It's funny because that just like stuck. Nobody thought of an actual scientific name. They just were like, close enough, good enough for me.
I mean, yeah, it works for me. And to this day, one of the funniest fossils I have ever seen was an injury in an Allosaurus's pelvis from a Stegosaurus thagomizer.
Like, I'll be talking to somebody, I'm like, oh yeah, the Stegosaurus thagomizer, and they're like, the what? And I'm like, oh, the pointy tail.
Yeah, the pointy things on the tail.
One of my favorite jokes in Jurassic Park 2, The Lost World. It's a throwaway line. It's like a blink and you'll miss it line. Roland the Hunter, is he's talking about a Pachycephalosaurus, and he's trying to pronounce the name. He's like he's like the one that looks like Friar Tuck. And it's like 100% true too.
It is, yeah, unfortunately. Like they're cute, but it's accurate.
It's like okay, and now I refer to it as the Friar Tuck dinosaur, and it's like
as you should.
And I've named this Pachycephalosaurus Friar Tuck.
Oh, bless it.
Like, all right, this is just what we're going with.
Like, I mean, if it works, it works.
I think he called Parasaurolophus the Elvis dinosaur or something. I think he called it Elvis.
Yep. Which is really I could see that.
I mean,
and then there's also I think the holotype of Cryolophosaurus is nicknamed Elvis.
Personally, Cryolophosaurus is one of my favorite dinosaurs. Like, it has a special place in my heart. Just because it was found in Antarctica, and I love to think about the conversation that happened to go do that.
Yeah, I do too.
They found some rock.
You haven't. Yeah, it's crazy to think how different Antarctica was back then compared to today. Because I saw the holotype of Cryolophosaurus with the traveling Antarctic dinosaurs exhibit, and it was pretty cool. Don't mind my pun.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It was a chilling experience.
It was.
But, I mean, just like sauropods alone, they get like. I mean, like a human gets gassy and they get upset a little bit. Something that's like 10 tons gets gassy. A, it's pretty stinky. B, I mean, they could knock over a whole forest.
Yeah, so, I mean, it really does make you wonder.
I think about something like as big as like the largest dinosaur, like Argentinosaurus, like a herd of them. Just
yes,
2 or 3 of them. Something spooks them. Because I would assume that I don't want to say that they would just be like a cow, but I feel like they would be kind of similar to a cow, where they kind of herd together a little bit, and then they see, like,
I could see that.
A wolf or something, and it kind of spooks a couple of them, and it spooks the rest of them. But you get on like the larger sides of some of those herds, they see something like an actual predator, like Giganotosaurus. I think sounds. That pronunciation I just feel is random. I don't know. I say Gigantosaurus because it's a giant lizard.
I say Giganotosaurus.
It's to each their own. I mean, but like it spooks one of them. That one is going to probably rile up the rest of them, and I mean they're not going to slow down for a while.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure these larger herbivores, like I'm sure, because I've heard the idea of like the Triceratops defense circle being questioned. If they
Being
really did
questioned.
that, like if that was like really a thing, but I'm like, why wouldn't it be? Why doesn't? I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I
And I
mean,
guess
I
it's
could
just,
see them doing that. I
I
mean,
guess it's just because they've.
a lot of the larger dinosaurs, like Triceratops, I think of them kind of like prehistoric rhinos. So they would probably mimic some of their behavior, and like sauropods would be kind of like the elephants and things like that. Um, so I mean, it's not surprising to me that somebody would question the defense circle, but you're right. It does make sense. So
And,
that's just kind of what I picture as like part of their defense mechanisms.
and I also think that it's just because of that, because there's no actual fossil record of that in.
Right.
So it's kind of like a theory based on an idea of watching modern animals.
Yes.
So it's like, well, there's no actual proof, so it could be true, it could be false.
I mean, maybe one day we'll find some footprints of a bunch of Triceratops standing in a circle, and then there will be a bunch of smaller footprints in the middle of that circle.
Sauropod footprints on the outside or something.
Yes. Now that would be a really cool
That
track
would
site.
be that would be like the find of the century.
That would be so sick.
I I mean, like I feel like T Rex and Triceratops, even Stegosaurus a little bit. They've had their spotlight, and I feel like they need to be swapped out some.
Yeah, uh, I think that more kinds of dinosaurs need the spotlight every once in a while.
Which is kind of why I'm surprised that the newest Jurassic Park movie went with Gigantosaurus.
Yeah, and
I was I was expecting T Rex to cause some havoc again. I was even expecting Spinosaurus a little bit from Jurassic Park 3, which was also like a huge, like, you're like, all right, yeah, T Rex for the first two movies. Now we have something bigger than T Rex, and it killed a T Rex, and it's not as well known, and it's not accurate anymore.
no, unfortunately, and I spoke to Nazar Ibrahim at the Why Dinosaurs premiere not too long ago, and he dropped a little teaser that Spinosaurus is has got some more changes coming. So
Again,
again,
here, try not to rip everything off my shelves.
it's hard when you're a dinosaur collector.
But I've got both types of Spinosaurus for if they
Oh,
ever.
the one with the paddle tail and one without.
It's like maybe there were two species, maybe there weren't. Because I've actually heard that there might have been two species. I'm still like skeptical on that because you mean there used to be like a complete Spinosaurus fossil in Poland and it was blown up in World War II. So we're like, all that research is down the drain. Which sucks.
Yeah, it is. Um, but I like the idea that um, there would be a semi-aquatic dinosaur because there's nothing else like it. So, it's just something that makes it stand out even more than it already did.
Because like people are like, oh, Spinosaurus is such a bizarre creature, but I'm like, is it though? I mean, it's basically just a giant alligator that walks on two legs, probably even four. So I mean, is it?
I mean, I can
Is
see
it
the appeal of it.
I definitely see the appeal of it, and both hold like a special place in my heart, just because I know it's probably one of the worst movies, but in the Jurassic Park franchise, but Jurassic Park 3 is oddly one of my favorites for some reason. Don't know
Well, I
why.
can't blame you there. I
Like
mean,
they
it's a
both
good one. I can get past most of the inaccuracies in the movies just because it is bringing a whole new spotlight to dinosaurs that didn't exist
Oh,
before, especially with the first movie.
I give it a pass for like the first one. Everybody like bashes it now, and they're like, "Oh, it's so inaccurate." The only thing in it that was really that super inaccurate was like Velociraptor. I
There
mean,
was Velociraptor, and
granted, nowadays at like this time and the knowledge that we have, we're like, "Oh, T Rex probably had feathers. Velociraptor was just miniature things. Hadrosaurs were massive. Blah 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 blah, etc. etc." But for the time, it was mostly accurate. I mean,
yeah, for the time, not too shabby. I always tell people, there was the Velociraptors. They were supposed to be a lot smaller, have some feathers, things like that. But it's just so funny to me that they made the Dilophosaurus so much smaller than it actually was. And you would
I was
think
actually
that having a Jurassic Park Velociraptor sized Dilophosaurus would be even scarier than what they actually put in the movie.
yeah, it would be. But I also heard somewhere that that was supposed to be like a juvenile Dilophosaurus, like it wasn't fully grown.
Now
And
that I had not
I
heard.
I think that that was just like a rumor that somebody started, and then some other people were like, "Yeah, it makes sense. That's why it wasn't fully. That's why it wasn't as big as it's supposed to be." But
Well,
I
I guess it
mean,
does make it better when you think about it that way.
ha- have you like looked at any dinosaur vocalization at all?
Not too much. I've seen, the studies come out from Parasaurolophus and things like that, and I've seen, the reels that people put out where they're like, "Oh, this is what scientists think dinosaurs actually sounded like," but I haven't actually looked into it myself.
Everybody's looking at like T Rex. I've seen Acrocanthosaurus a couple times, which really surprised me because I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm surprised even people know this. And then Spinosaurus. One of them I have yet to like see or hear about is Dilophosaurus. And
Well, I'm sure somebody out there has made one because that's such a it's a common well,
yeah, it's gonna
I
be
know a
me.
lot
I'm
of
not
people
gonna
had
guess.
the Jurassic Park kind of like Dilophosaurus chittering as their ringtone for a little while. So there's got to be one floating around somewhere.
It's gonna be me after this. But I mean, I recently did an episode, not recently, it was a couple months ago, but I guess it's recent. On dinosaur vocalization. Here, let's see if I can find the video real quick. And the Dilophosaurus sounded so much different than I would expect.
Okay.
And also it was the size of it was not the size of, but it was bigger than Ceratosaurus, which also really surprised me. That's not what I wanted to do. I've done that way too many times. Um, but it was bigger than the Ceratosaurus in their scaling, and I was like, "Whoa, that's really crazy to think about." That the Dilophosaurus was actually bigger than Ceratosaurus
Huh.
in there.
Grammarly now uses AI
No,
to help.
we're not watching ads. We're not responding to ads today. But just that, just like the sound of it in the video of like you're like they're not complete. It's not completely accurate. The study's not done. Please don't take it as 100% fact.
Right. Take it with a grain of salt.
Pretty much, but it. I'm like, I kind of hope it sounded like that because here, let me. Oop. There it is. Most in my most replayed section. That's really funny. Here, how do I? Let me figure out how to screen share real quick. Nose. Here. I can't do this at the same. All right, whatever. We'll just do this. It's gonna pop up. Hey, there we go. I mean, that's way different than the Jurassic Park sound.
That's so creepy.
It's so like eerie yet soothing at the same time.
A little bit, but like I just kept picturing myself back in that time, like hiding behind a tree, and then I just hear that like just echoing
Right
throughout the
behind you,
forest,
you're
and I
like,
just
well, well,
it's unsettling.
it's like 'cause you hear the YouTube video and you're like, oh wow, it sounds amazing, but you're also like, what if I was in that time? It was
Yeah.
12 o'clock at night and I hear that through the bushes right next to me.
Exactly.
Like-
And it just doesn't seem like one of those things that you would want to come across
You're like-
yourself.
Like, I'm good. You said you had the you knew some people who had the Dilophosaurus chattering and as their ringtone. You
Yep.
set that as your ringtone. You're in like the middle of a meeting and your phone goes off. Everybody's like, It's like,
That's actually happened to me a couple of times. But I mean, the people knew me, and like it went off, and they just kind of looked at me funny, and I was like, "Oh, it's the Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park," and they're like, "Oh, okay, makes sense."
Also, one of the things about like I know they're inaccurate in today's standards, and Dilophosaurus didn't have the frills. I'm also like, technically they answered your question in the movie about the accuracy by saying that they used frog and lizard and snake DNA to fill in the missing gaps.
Yeah.
That would obviously affect the outcome of whatever creature you're trying to clone.
Of course.
Probably making them more reptilian. So I'm like, it almost answers itself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, Velociraptor still isn't answered. And then after the movie was premiered, they found Utah Raptor, and then they're like, that is what we were going for. Like, sure.
Yeah, kind of backpedaling a little bit, but you know.
But I mean, could you imagine if they like remade Jurassic Park with like accurate dinosaurs?
I think people would go. Okay, I think people would go one of two ways.
They'd get upset because it wasn't like the original.
Yes, exactly. So people that would be furious that it's not like the original, and then there would be people who would be just overjoyed at one, having more dinosaur content, and two, just the accuracies themselves, and like just basically being proud of the movie makers for actually trying to do something correctly.
You'd have the third group flabbergasted at how different the movie would be.
Their gas would be absolutely flabbered.
The Velociraptor scene in the kitchen would turn into a comedy scene.
Yep.
It wouldn't be able to get in. It'd be too tiny. There's a guy on YouTube who did that. He is going through and like re-editing the movie with more accurate dinosaurs.
Oh, that's cool.
which I mean is going to take him a while. But it's like,
Right.
but it, but I mean, that would be such like an amazing idea. And I feel like if they did that, they could replace Velociraptor. Because frankly, I feel like Velociraptor, the name obviously has, I don't want to say it's been dragged through the mud, but it has definitely been mistreated through Jurassic Park, where everybody thinks it's the giant reptilian thing that you see in Jurassic Park, but it was actually like a tiny bird. And it's like, yeah. But if they replaced it with like Dilophosaurus, and instead of like the hissing that the raptors did, they had like that,
Yes.
it would have been a whole lot more scary.
Yeah, a whole new ball game, I think.
And in the book, because I here. Wrong bag. I have like the Holy Bible of Jurassic Park books.
Oh, wow, that's gorgeous.
In one, my family has had this since like before me.
Wow.
And I've just taken it and reread it so many times.
That's book impressive.
Is so much more different than the movies.
Yes, it is. It's vastly different.
Like, Hammond dies to Compsognathus. That's one of the major differences.
Which I thought was hilarious.
I did too. I mean, also, even the small ones are dangerous.
Drink honestly, the numbers.
I feel like I'd be more scared of like a bunch of smaller dinosaurs, because like a T-Rex, I'm like, okay, if I go down like a concrete corridor, it can't chase me. It's going to like try to stick its head in, but I'm gonna be like, I can just keep backing up. I'll be fine.
Right. I feel like
easier to avoid.
Larger dinosaurs could more easily be outmaneuvered, whereas the smaller dinosaurs like Compsognathus are their strength in numbers, and they're small, they're agile.
If the whole idea of the venom thing in its teeth is true, that's probably going to hurt.
Ugh. Yeah. Oh my god.
Also, I saw somewhere that T-Rex probably wouldn't hunt like a human. Like, the energy it would get from consuming a human wouldn't be worth the effort to extrude to like catch one.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think that it would probably spend most of its time on prey that it knows would actually sustain it.
Like, probably like a large, what would you call that? Hadrosaur. I mean, you get a lot of nutrients, energy, protein, all the things you need to build, grow, and survive. But like a human, you're not getting that much for that large of an animal.
But no, I wouldn't think so.
If T-Rex was as bloodlustful as it was in the books, we shouldn't bring it back then. But
yet they're working on it anyway.
One of the things that I found really crazy was the Carnotaurus in the book. And most people don't know about it, but Carnotaurus was in the book. And
I'm struggling to remember it, though.
And even like the T-Rex were scared of it. They weren't large in the book. They were probably more accurate sized. Also, I have this little Carnotaurus here.
Oh, that one's so cool.
But they weren't like massive, but they would live in groups. They could camouflage. They hunted at night. And it's like, because there was apparently one scene, I forgot. One day I hope to be able to quote this book like people quote the Bible, which would be kind of funny. Michael Crichton, Jurassic Park, Chapter 3, 24-25. It's like, okay.
But I have no doubt that you'll get there one day.
there's somebody, he's looking at a fence and he sees the slightest of movement, and it's because I think the Carnotaurus like blinked, and that was the only way he knew it was there, and it was like
Oh,
blending in with the fence, and I'm like, somebody needs to rewrite the movie and add this in there because that would be horrifying.
okay. So I think I remember the
Wow.
part you're talking about now. That sounds familiar.
I'm like, wow, like they're like, the people are like, don't go in the jungle at night. It's not the T-Rex you got to worry about. I'm like, because you're like, oh, T-Rex, it's this big bad monster. Probably chase between some trees, lose it. I mean,
Yeah,
run
yeah.
zigzags, serpentine.
Serpentine.
But like something like slightly bigger than you, just strong enough, like stronger than you to overpower you, to just consume you. You couldn't see it coming. It hunts at night. There's multiple of them. It camouflages. It's like, that is different.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to see that kind of camouflage in person. Like I know we see it in modern day animals, but it would be cool to watch dinosaurs do it.
Granted, I'm sure not many dinosaurs, like I'm sure Carnotaurus didn't actually have that, but they kind of like, again, they probably had, they talk about it. I think they added cuttlefish genes into it. So
Oh yeah, I
like,
remember that.
the whole genetic splicing thing kind of just, it's a little bit of like a free way to be able to, like, as long as we don't go overboard and we don't have them like breathing fire or some weird thing, and it's something that an actual animal could do. Like Compsognathus was like, okay, I don't know if it actually had venom in its teeth, but if you added in like rattlesnake DNA, I mean, they're venomous. I'm sure it would play some kind of effect on it.
I'm sure they could have tinkered with it to make it so.
But I'm like, Ninja Carnotaurus, T-Rex throwing cars, like Velociraptors escaping to the mainland. I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah, they went all out with it towards the end.
And then this second book, they're like, all right, we're done with this, and they carpet bomb the island. And I'm like, oh darn. But I mean, the book is definitely different, but I love it, and
yeah,
there's definitely similarities and differences in the movies and the books. But, or the books, I guess it's books. There's two. But they both different yet similar. They each have like a special place in my heart.
Yeah, and that's totally understandable. And I'm the same way. And I definitely don't fault people for, expressing, that love of Jurassic Park, because it deserves all the merit that it gets.
It does. It introduced the world, because before then, I mean, people only really saw dinosaurs in a museum. Outside of that, they were like, there's not much that really catches my attention about them. Yeah. And Jurassic Park was really that first pop culture movie that started that boom of
right. It was a whole new wave for paleontology and science fiction, and it reignited people's interest in the field.
Paleontology as like a whole hasn't been around but like 200 years.
Yeah, it's a very young science.
But that doesn't mean that people weren't like, I mean, like, I did like a whole episode on the historiography of, which is the history of paleontology. And I mean, like, you had like the ancient Chinese, you had the ancient Persians, and you had 14th century people, you had people who found, I mean, you look at dragons. I mean, if I found a T-Rex skull and didn't know what a T-Rex was, I mean, I'm going to be like, are these things still living?
Yeah, I actually did a presentation not too long ago. I mean, it was earlier this year called A History of Dragons. And it was all about how in the past dinosaur fossils and other kinds of fossils were misconstrued as like dragons and other monsters and things like that. And I found out a whole lot of stuff that I hadn't before. So it was really cool to just kind of watch that evolution from these gigantic mythical monsters to science and fact. So that was really cool.
Like the Persians, I think they believed. I think it was the Persians. They believed that they were like there was like a race of giant people before us,
right?
And that's, I guess technically they weren't far off. There were larger, humanoid-like figures that did exist. So
right.
But I mean, if I found like a sauropod femur, because they were found, I mean, you find fossils all over the world, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, and it's bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's got these monstrous teeth, and
I fought in a war.
What else could it be other than a monster?
I fought in a war. I killed the dude. I saw a human skeleton. This bone looks like that bone.
Yep.
Maybe they were giant humans.
I mean, they decorated their houses with, fossils, and they kind of built monuments to these things, and they put them in their art, their jewelry, everything.
Like, I talked to this one dude, Sergey, the Russian archaeologist. He said that like Native Americans, you would find like megalodon teeth. They thought that they were like ancient dragon scales, like they're gods, like maybe they were some kind of beast, some kind of scale on there. They used them in rituals. They had them as decoration on themselves in their house. And I'm like, they'd find like some like long piece of like mammoth bone. They found like a piece of mammoth bone. He went on a dig or something, and it had been like carved into fresh whenever it was like immediately harvested. And it's like there were, and I feel like the idea, and I feel like the day we find a triceratops bone and somebody carved something into the side of it is the day that science just falls apart, because then there will be a lot of questions.
Yeah, I agree. And there were I can't remember the exact place, but it was in Asia, and I remember reading about this valley that was just so full of fossils that people had been finding for centuries, and they believed that it was like a battlefield for dragons, and like the bones that they found were like the ones that had like fallen, and they considered that land cursed, and nobody ever entered that valley because of that belief.
And then nowadays, the people that still are around that believe in that, you got like a scientist like, I'm gonna go dig it up, and they're all like, you have unleashed a curse on all of us.
Yep, exactly. You have cursed us all.
It's probably wrong to say, but the guy who created the geological timescales, what is his name? John Phillips.
Yep.
He formally divided the geological columns into three major eras: the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic, based on the sharp breaks in fossil records. He was born the 25th of December, 1800, at Marden, Wiltshire. He died the 24th of April, 1874. He died at All Souls College, but by leaving, he slipped and fell down a flight of stone stairs, dying the next day due to brain hemorrhage. So, the dude that divided up timescales based on rocks died to rocks.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Going full circle. I'm like,
He
Wow.
completed the rock cycle.
Now he's fossils. I'm kidding.
Oh,
That's kind of messed up. But
wow! I never knew that. That's actually kind of cool.
yeah, very sad, but cool. I mean,
Sad but cool.
he's like, my time is done. I have split up the geological timescales. Well, I'm gonna head out. It's like, okay, buddy. But like, because I just did it at the back because it's just like it looks like a bunch of gibberish and lines to you probably because the
It's
camera's not
just
picking it up.
it's a little small for me to read right now.
But I basically just did just historical facts of paleontology major events. I could have definitely done the date every dinosaur was found, but that would have taken way too long.
Yeah, I've been
Um,
meaning to do something similar, just to kind of
like a
celebrate the
database.
anniversaries that these dinosaurs were found on, but goodness, it would take forever.
If you need a I don't want to say semi-reliable because it's very reliable. A reliable database. There's a website called prehistoricwildlife.com.
Okay.
Let's see. Wildlife.com. Yay, my internet's slow. As it tends to be.
Probably because you're videoing and recording.
I
And
think that's what it is. Wow, okay, this looks way different. Did they update their website? No, I don't think they did. Here, I'll... Ooh, please don't end recording. That would suck. Okay. Wow, okay, this is really laggy and it kind of is very confusing to use. But it basically is just you open it and there's like a line of just letters. You'll click on like a letter and it'll just drop down like a bunch of names of just different prehistoric. It's not even just dinosaurs. It's got like prehistoric mammals, prehistoric fish, sharks, other species. Here.
oh,
Perfect.
cool! I'll have to check that out then. It'd be neat to kind of celebrate the Discovery Day for a lot of them.
Honestly, I'd like one of these for like paleontologists, just because there's a few of them where it's like I'm like I don't really know you're born. Like I figured out one of the two Bone Wars people were here we go, where it's basically just like a little glossary. You can click on the letter M for no reason.
Oh, okay.
And it basically just drops down a list, and there's like some pictures on the side for certain dinosaurs, but everything like Metasoia is a snake. Here, let's pick something. Mapusaurus. Yeah, let's go with Mapusaurus. Something I can actually pronounce. You drop it down. It's got like a size on it. It's got like a little scale. It's got name, the how to pronounce it, who it was named by, how its classification, its species, the diet, the size, the location, timeline, fossil, like the kinds of fossils they've actually found, and then you scroll down and there's usually like a little paragraph thing talking about just whatever facts about it.
Oh.
And then basically just if you want to read more about it, there's other presentations at the bottom.
Well, that's cool. That's a neat little database.
I mean, it's one of the mini database that I use just because it's fairly reliable. It's not overwhelming with stuff. It's easy. It's easily organized. It's easy to find and talk about.
Mm-hmm. And it
which
just
you
kind
can
of
do.
helps
There's even
having
like
a
a
bunch
search
of that
bar in it.
information in one spot.
Yeah, there's like a search bar in it. So if you want to just search up a specific dinosaur, you can just be like Allosaurus, and it pops up with Allosaurus, and you just click on it. And
Well, that's awesome. I'll have to use that sometime.
I use it way too much. I mean,
I wouldn't say too much.
you can never go wrong. I mean, granted, I don't have the best memory, and my knowledge is not 100% there where it should be. Like I couldn't tell you the exact size of. Let's go with Dinocoreus. Just like I can't tell you the exact size just off the top of my head, which is why I started like a notebook for that. So I'm like,
Smart.
oh, well, what was the size of Dinocoreus? Flip through it, find it, and then I got basic facts about it, where it was found, time periods on it.
It's like your little Pokédex.
Basically that. I mean,
Yeah.
and and when I finish that book, I've got like 6 or 7 more notebooks, and I'm just gonna fill up.
Just keep filling them up and don't stop.
I dread the day that I run out of dinosaurs to talk about on my podcast.
I don't think you will.
I don't
because
think I will. Not even in my lifetime. I'd have to probably pass it down to 2 or 3 different people.
And I mean, there's always subjects that you can come back and revisit because there's new stuff coming out about these things every single day. So there's no way you're going to run out of stuff to talk about.
Never. Like, I went back and redid my episode on T-Rex because it was like the first episode I ever did.
Right.
So I had like an updated version. I did more stuff in it. I mean, I came back and talked about it. But I mean, even if I somehow run out of dinosaurs, there's other prehistoric lizards, there's prehistoric plants, there's prehistoric, even just the land itself, there's biomes, there's prehistoric mammals. I mean, we could talk about the evolution of the dinosaurs because I would love to figure out what kind of weird factors created some of these dinosaurs.
Yeah. And there's some really interesting questions to ask. And I don't know, there's just so many different subjects that you could branch off with, like even with just a single dinosaur, like their eyesight, their hearing. You could even talk about, their reproduction and their like social behavior and stuff like that. So there's just endless possibilities.
Like one of the biggest debates that I've not really heard anything from, but like one person, but we're not going to talk about that, is if dinosaurs had lips or not.
Yeah, that would make an interesting video.
It very much so did because I had no idea what I was talking about. But basically, the person I was talking to, we determined that it was some kind of like the idea of dinosaurs having feathers. Some did, some didn't. Some had a need for them. Some probably didn't have them. Like, if a dinosaur lives in a desert, why would it need feathers? It probably wouldn't want feathers because it would probably make it overheat and die. But if it lived in a tundra or a frozen wasteland, it wouldn't have scales. It would freeze to death and die. It probably would have feathers to insulate it. With something like a sauropod wouldn't have feathers because I feel like they would be more like a whale. Like
or like an elephant.
So not feathers, but like kind of like body hair like they have.
Almost, yeah.
But I mean, just the theories in general are just endless. And there's always going to be new theories coming out because we always have new finds.
Exactly. Like how the other day, the Museum of the Rockies just announced that Big Al does not belong to Allosaurus fragilis. It belongs to Jamancini now.
Really?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that could be something that you talk about.
I mean, there's 4 or 5 different... I mean, because you say something like Triceratops. There's 2 major different species. It's Horridus and... Oh, no, I'm blanking on the other one. Triceratops horridus, and there's another one, and it's basically just the angle of the horns. One, the horn goes like that. The other one, the horn goes down.
Yep.
I think there's a third one now where it's just straight.
Yeah, I'm not very good with species names.
I mean, that's getting a little too technical for my taste, but
yeah.
what are you going to do? I mean, it also kind of makes you think, what if reptile and bird? What if they're both right? What if there's two different species of T-Rex, one with feathers, one without?
That's an idea.
Because, I mean, I'm sure there would be like a lot of animals where, because, I mean, I always think about like, what are they, pterosaurs? They're so hard to find because their bones are so fragile. They don't ever really survive fossilization. Oh, yeah. So what species have we lost because of that? Because of something like that?
Yeah, huge question. And a lot of people don't even realize how rare it is for something to fossilize in the first place, because you have to have 100% the right conditions for it to happen. And even then, it's a 1 in a million chance.
People are like, I went digging in my backyard and I didn't find any fossils. And it's like, well, yeah, you also live in like Florida or something. You live in,
yeah, like you live in a place that you wouldn't find them anyway.
Like where I live in, even parts of Mississippi. I mean, if you go to the coast and you go digging, it's not sedimentary rock. It doesn't stack on top of each other. It's just right. Like
it's very specific spots that you have to go to. It's not like out in the West where you go to these outcrops and they're popping up like daisies. The geology is just completely different.
Which is why you find large sections of preserved things like that in just like one giant area.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why like Montana down to even like Texas just womp.
Yep.
Fossils. I mean,
you find it's just like a wall of
you find them everywhere. And most of the fossils that you find on like the coast are usually some kind of aquatic creature, or I was about to say prehistoric animal, but way too generic. But prehistoric mammals like mammoth or Smilodon, because even at Edisto in like Greenville in South Carolina, they found like Smilodon remains.
I had heard about that actually.
Because I went to talk to the people at this state museum. I hope they're listening, because you don't respond to any of my emails. I'm calling them out right now. Answer some of my emails, please. They're talking about it. They went up to a fossil site called Camelot, and like because most fossil sites around the world are usually contract because they're going to construct something there. So they're like, okay, dig it up, make sure there's nothing important that we can't. If you find some seashells, don't worry about it. But if you find like a mammoth skeleton, we can't build here.
Yep, it becomes a whole new ball game.
Sadly, that only really applies in like America.
Yeah,
because there's a species of sauropod in China where they were building a highway, and the highway crew had just ripped up a bunch of the bones, and they were just lost forever. And it's like, okay, well, you didn't have to do it like that, but
you didn't have to do me like that.
I mean, I would have loved to like study that. Maybe you could call some people and be like, "Hey, what is this?" But no. But they were doing like a construction thing, and they're digging it up, and they're like, "Oh, we don't find anything. We got like 2 or 3 days left." And somebody was like, "Oh, look at this bone fragment I found." And they're like, "Oh, wait, what? It looks like a Smilodon bone fragment." And they start digging up, and they found like 2 Smilodon skulls.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's like, yeah, you can't build here for a while. We're gonna keep digging.
Yep.
And it's just how many stories are like that? I mean,
Yeah, I think it was a similar thing that happened with Borella pelta in Canada. They hit it with the backhoe, and they were like, wait, that's not supposed to happen. And they go down there, and there's a freaking dinosaur in the hole.
one of my one of my favorite types of stories is there'll be some farmer out west, and they were like, "Well, I was digging here and I hit this rock and I can't pull it up out of the ground. Do you know what it is?" And they dig it up and it's like a whole skull, and they're like, "Yeah, you can't farm here anymore." They're like,
No.
"All right, darn it."
Oh, man.
I mean, the amount of dinosaurs that are just like some farmer found them. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
quite
it's
a few.
amazing how many are found just by accident and then by, amateurs or not, or people like not even related to the field at all.
That the dinosaur cowboy guy that I've interviewed,
Hmm.
that's how he got started. He was working on a ranch. Some dude walked up and was like, "Hey, you mind if I dig for some dinosaur bones?" Because the Jurassic Park movie had just come out, and he comes back with part of a Triceratops frill, and he's like, "Oh, how much could you sell it for?" He's like, "Oh, probably like $500." And he's like, "Oh, wow,
Oh,
I can go find some rocks." He went and got a bucket, got some burlap sacks, and just started doing it. And he was like, "Maybe I should study these." And then he just got into the craft. I mean,
it's better than selling them.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure he probably still does. I mean, because out in like I was about to say the Morrison Formation, but I guess yeah, the Morrison Formation probably too. But the Hell Creek Formation, he has a lot of chunks that he calls chunkosaur.
We call them that too.
It's basically it's like just the bone. You can't determine what it is, so it's like it's not helpful. And somebody out there is probably like, I want to say I have a dinosaur bone. It's like, all right, I'll trade you this chunkosaur for $200. And I was like, all right. It's like, wow, okay, you're gullible. Sadly, that's probably the worst part of this craft is that it's so expensive to get things like that to study. Because I'm sure most of the dig sites, if they're not donated, are probably have to be sold to museums.
Yeah. We have to worry about fossil poachers out where we are all the time, and it's always upsetting to see fossils going up for auction or for sale anywhere, especially when their place is in science and not in somebody's living room.
I mean, even like, I mean, of course, I have some fossils just because, I mean, why wouldn't I? I mean, I love doing it, but like, one of the major fossils I have is like indeterminable. It is just like chunkosaur. So, I mean,
Right.
it's on a mount. So it's like,
And I mean, there is a gray area. It's
yeah,
not just a black and white thing.
I mean, selling something like that where it's like, all right, this is dinosaur bone, or you're like, here's part of a shedded Camarasaurus molar. It's like, okay, you go out and find 8 more without really trying that hard. But to a certain degree, if you're selling like an entire skeleton, it should be to something like a museum or a scientist. But
Exactly.
like the idea, which is why I think selling molds is way better.
Yes.
Because that's something
100%.
like, because most of the stuff that I have, even like this megalodon tooth, I mean, it's not real, but it's a mold. So I mean,
it's still pretty high quality.
Yeah, it's museum grade quality from a group of people called the Fossil Crates. Like she got.
Oh yeah, the guy who runs that, Brian Curtis, he's like my paleo uncle.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I'm making connections.
Yeah, he's like my
Really
paleo
nice
uncle
dude.
because he's best friends with my mentor that helped me get started in paleo. So
He's a really nice dude.
he's awesome.
I'm gonna get him back on the show because he went to some convention. God, I forgot what it's called, but
SVP.
yes.
Yep, I was there too.
You were there too. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'd love to
I
hear what
mean,
you
it was my first time going, surprisingly. It was in Cincinnati, Ohio this year. And I don't know, it was exciting and it was overwhelming because there were over 1,000 paleontologists there.
Wow.
It was a lot. And apparently that's small for a convention. But yeah, I mean, there were all these talks to go to, like, and they had them broken up into sessions. So, like, the first day, like, the first half of the day was sauropods and ornithischians. And then the other half of the day, I think, was I can't remember, but like there was a theropod session, and there were sessions about like dinosaur soft tissue research and things like that. And then of course there were the poster sessions at the end of the day, so people got to present their posters in the convention ballrooms, and it was just this really great opportunity to connect with other scientists in the community and catch up with old friends and just kind of swap business cards and be like, hey, I work for this person, you should, collab with us on some stuff. Or like, hey, I have this fossil that, one of your research people could use on their project. You guys could, come check it out. So it's just, it was a lot of networking, really, to just find people, and make connections and things like that. And, but it was also really fun because they have this auction on one night of the convention, and they do a silent auction first, where a bunch of people have donated a bunch of like paleontology, like memorabilia, like t-shirts and dinosaur toys and, just and like old research papers and things like that. And you can bid on it, and people get into these bidding wars, which is so funny because you can just kind of like go around the table and see who's bid on what, and people are just constantly trying to outbid each other. And then there's the live auction, where the more prominent members of SVP get up on stage and have like the actual auction. And each year they do a theme, like the people doing the auction dress up in costumes. So like one year they dressed up as like I can't think of any other examples, but this year they dressed up as like the Mandalorian. So they were in all these Star Wars costumes. But then some of them were dressed up like from the Barbie movie. One of them dressed up as Ken. It was, yeah, it was crazy. And then there's an after party, and it was borderline kind of like a rave, but with paleontologists. And it was so funny because I didn't know that paleontologists knew how to party.
You ever watch
Well,
the show Friends?
Yeah, I did. But
I think I do.
let's see. You know who Thomas Holtz is, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was there. I have a video of him dancing to I Am a Paleontologist. He's like waving his arms in the air, and it's hysterical. But yeah, it was a really fun experience, and I made a lot of connections, and I got to meet Dr. Curtis in person for the first time. I met Brian Eng, a famous paleo artist. I met Pete Larson. Let's see, met Thomas Holtz for the first time. So I got to meet a lot of my big paleontology heroes at this thing. So it was pretty cool.
I know it's probably not the best thing to say, but if I could go back in time and talk to just like 2 or 3 people outside of some really famous people, like probably just like personal idols like Theodore Roosevelt, I would go talk to him because he's just like a hard MFer for lack of better words. And I'd love to just go talk to him. But outside of that, Cope and Othniel Marsh, I would go talk to both of them.
Oh my goodness.
I would figure out how to record it. I would bring it back in time with me, and I would go interview them, talk to them, because I want to know what was going through their mind during the Bone Wars.
They were idiots. Absolute idiots.
Absolute idiots, but it was amazing at the same time.
It was. And, because on one hand, what they were able to accomplish was revolutionary for the field because their rivalry sparked so many significant, discoveries and things like that. But at the same time, they would destroy each other's, quarries just to get back at the other. So there's no telling what was destroyed because of them.
Edward Drinker Cope, Othniel Marsh, 136 new species were discovered.
Yep.
Between 1877 and 1892, which is like, wow.
Right. I actually have a t-shirt that my husband made for me years ago because someone asked me, if I had to choose between being friends with Cope versus being friends with Marsh, who would I choose? And I chose Cope because, I know that he had his faults too, but in the long run, it seemed like he was a nicer person. He was better to his men. He seemed a little bit more dedicated to the science of it more than Marsh, because Marsh never actually did any of the digging himself. He would just hire these like thugs to do it for him, and they were usually these pretty shady people. So
Edward,
I think it would be.
He looks like a scientist, so
he does. He's got the mustache for it.
He was also born on July 28th, so.
Oh, hey.
For anybody else born on July 28th, you share a birthday. And October 29th was Marsh's birthday, so anybody who shares those birthdays, you share a birthday with a very famous yet kind of stupid paleontologist.
I'm sure that there are some paleo nerds out there that use that as their fun fact. Like, yeah, I share my birthday with Cope and Marsh or whatever.
And I know he's not an actual paleontologist, but Sam Neill. He played Dr. Alan Grant.
Uh-huh.
I would go talk to him too.
He's an honorary paleontologist. How about that?
He very much so is. In my eyes, he's an honorary paleontologist.
Yes.
Also, I kind of don't really see him in any other role. Like, I look at him and I'm like, okay, you're Dr. Alan Grant. I see him in another movie, I'm like, when is he going to talk about dinosaurs?
Yeah.
like a super spy in one movie, I'm like, does he work at a museum?
But he seems like a very down-to-earth
He seems very chill, too.
Yeah, so I don't think he would really mind mainly being known as Dr. Alan Grant.
Because some of those people, like, I feel like I feel bad for what's his face? The guy that played Han Solo.
Oh, Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford. I feel bad for him because everybody pesters him about that. I can't
believe he turned it down.
I don't want to say that Jurassic Park fans aren't toxic, because there are their fair share of toxic fans, but there's nothing more toxic than a Star Wars fan. And
debatable.
You got a point there, debatable. But nobody hates Star Wars like a Star Wars fan. And I feel like the people that hate on the Jurassic Park movie isn't about the movie itself.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
I don't really see people being like, the quality of the movie is bad, the acting is horrible. I don't ever see that. I'm always seeing, the dinosaurs aren't accurate. this should have been like this. This should have been this size or something like that. And it's like,
Yeah, and I do see what you mean about the Star Wars franchise,
but
especially with the newer ones.
they pester Harrison Ford. There's like a clip of him at some convention, and he's sitting up on a panel, and some dude's like, in this episode, Han Solo's hand blaster has this kind of handle, but in this episode, it has a different color handle. Why is that? And he's like,
Ah,
I don't know, prop.
that's just
Prop thing?
nitpicking.
But
Nitpicking is so annoying.
oh god, I hate it when people do that. That actually like it leaves like a sensation in the back of my spine where I kind of just like I want to throw you into a wall. I'm probably wrong for saying that, but for some of these people, I'm like, I don't want to throw you into a wall.
Nah, I don't think so. As long as you don't actually do it, I think it's okay.
No, I don't ever plan on it. And there's no reason to throw someone into a wall for nitpicking a movie, but I'm like, all the, especially like, I was about to say Neil deGrasse Tyson. I was about to say Neil deGrasse Tyson, but I cannot remember any of these actors' name, like John Attenborough. May he rest in peace. I guess his brother now, David Attenborough, he did Prehistoric Planet, so
yeah.
So,
and he did a superb job with it.
Very much so. Okay, have you seen Life on Our Planet?
I have not. I've been meaning to sit down and watch it, but I've heard mixed reviews.
Can't go wrong with Morgan Freeman. It was an amazing show.
Oh, does he narrate that?
He does, and it
wow.
is so soothing. There's some bloopers going around.
Oh my gosh!
With
I
him,
have to see those.
He sees like the squid, and he's like, "Oh, that is a big squid." Oh, I love Morgan Freeman.
I do too. I'll have to really watch that then.
Because I wanted to ask you which one you like more, Prehistoric Planet or Life on Our Planet, but you haven't seen Life on Our Planet, so.
Well, I'm planning on watching it sometime this week. So I have to catch up with everybody else as soon as possible.
For me, if you want like an actual show, not just exclusively about dinosaurs, but like the history of actual life, because that's kind of how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like the actual like evolution of everything, and that's Life on Our Planet. And
right.
If you want that and you don't want to just watch about dinosaurs, but like the other animals too, that show is perfect. But if you're like, okay, I want to show all about dinosaurs in their different areas, Prehistoric Planet is better.
Okay, I get that.
I feel like they each have their own role.
It's got like they've both got a little something for everybody.
They do. And I mean, also David Attenborough, the brother of John Attenborough, got that dinosaur brother thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
One brought dinosaurs back to life. One talks about dinosaurs.
Yep.
I mean, it's quite the duo they got there. So you can't really. He also has a very soothing voice too. You can't go wrong with him. And then Morgan Freeman, you can't go wrong with him. He's got a very nice
no, you can never go wrong with Morgan Freeman.
He's God.
Yeah, he is.
He played God in that movie. Speaking of dinosaur documentaries, you work with the Why Dinosaur documentary.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen you pop up on their page quite a bit. Would you like to talk about what it is? What is your role in it?
Yeah. So I'll start it out. So Why Dinosaurs it's a documentary about dinosaurs and the people who love them. And it ultimately has the question, why dinosaurs? So we see dinosaurs in pretty much all of our media. They're in books and movies and toys, and they're pretty much everywhere you look. So I guess that really came up to the father and son duo who created the movie, because it started out with the son when he was really young, because he, started out as a dinosaur kid, just like we all do. Um, and, grew up, drawing dinosaurs, playing with dinosaurs, doing all the stereotypical dinosaur kid things. And so it just made them wonder, okay, why dinosaurs though? Like, why not anything else? So they started this film 6 or 7 years ago, and they've interviewed people from all over the world, just about every continent. They've interviewed science communicators and paleontologists and researchers, artists and toy collectors, tattoo artists, and just all these other people from all walks of life. And at the end of every interview, they would ask, why dinosaurs? And that person would give them, the reason, like why they think dinosaurs, are the prominent feature. So it's just it's really like a wholesome film where you kind of watch his son grow up and become a paleontologist, and you watch him learn how to be a fossil preparator. You watch him learn how to properly dig up dinosaurs, and then prepare them in the lab and glue the bones back together. So it's a really heartwarming film about that journey, and just kind of James, the son, finding his way in the paleontological world, and really getting down to the core of what dinosaurs are to us as human beings. And ultimately, they are a gateway for us. They are the gateway that we use as children to get into the world of science, because they're what inspired us in the first place, because they're big, they're extinct, and they're
unknown,
mysterious.
They're abstract.
Yes, exactly. And I actually had a very small part in it, because my career was just starting out when I was interviewed for it 2 years ago. Back then, I was working at the Auburn University Museum of Natural History as a fossil preparator, and I was just starting out in science communication. But I was also an intern at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. And so I was up there, and they were coming into town for filming and things like that. And I got to talk about science communication and why dinosaurs are so important for science communication. And I got to talk about women in science a little bit, because needless to say, we're still kind of stereotyped in the field. And a lot of people think that, we just belong in a classroom, or, things like that. And I got to show how cool it is that women in paleontology have so many different jobs, and how confident and powerful that we've become in our positions. Because I work in the field, and I'm super proud of that, because I get to use social media to show people that women can be field technicians, and they can use the heavy power tools too. And like, we understand, the compounds of the glue that we use, and things like that. So it's like I got to be a representative of women in paleo for the film, even if just for a small part.
So, I mean, is it out to the public yet, or?
It's not out yet, just yet. But the director, Tony, said that it's in talks to be on, I think, either Netflix or Amazon Prime Video. But I believe an official announcement is coming soon.
Either way, I'm going to watch it, so.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely worth it, because it's not your typical documentary where they're like, and now we watch this Allosaurus stalk this herd of Diplodocus. It's not like that. It's really
It's not
getting
a documentary
down
about the dinosaurs themselves, but the study of paleontology.
Exactly. So like it's why paleontology is important. It's, how dinosaurs have brought everybody together as a community. So it's a heartwarming film in that way.
So I guess there's an obvious question here. Why dinosaurs?
Oh, I should have expected that. Naturally, I can't remember the answer that I gave them 2 years ago, but I'm assuming that it's more or less the same as what I'm about to say. Why dinosaurs? Because they are the gateway to science. And whether that, kid grows up to be, a paleontologist or not, they could grow up to be a doctor, or they could, get into animal sciences or things like that. Either way, dinosaurs are what got them there, because that was the first step. And not only that, I hardly know a soul that wasn't at least once fascinated by dinosaurs. And even if, they're, just, like a lawyer or a farmer, or, just going about their everyday job that has nothing to do with
Everybody
dinosaurs.
can name a dinosaur.
Exactly. Everybody can name one. And everybody, who starts listening to me or somebody else in paleontology talk about what we do, they're immediately just enraptured by it. And even if you're just standing in a museum with somebody and you have no idea who this person is, but you're both looking up at a T-Rex or a sauropod, just standing there like as if it were alive, even though it's just bones and casts and things like that, you're both looking up at that thing and wondering, what was this thing like when it was alive? What was it called? What did it sound like? How did it behave? You're asking these questions to yourself, and that person next to you is asking themselves the same question. And like, you could be from New York, that person could be from India or London or Australia. But the thing is, you are in that moment right then asking those questions because of that creature standing in front of you. And that's why dinosaurs are important.
It's fair enough. I mean,
I
granted,
think so.
why I like dinosaurs is probably not as scientifically worded as you, but I mean, and I can't wait for that to come out, because that's something that I definitely, honestly, I didn't even know about it till like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. But it's been in the making for a long time. And I mean, I know everybody, loves to listen to David Attenborough or Morgan Freeman or things like that. And, that is the scientific side of it, which is equally as important. But why dinosaurs, I feel like, is for everybody, because it includes people from all backgrounds, all walks of life. And it's people from all over with varying interests that come together with a single interest, which is prehistoric life. And it just kind of makes us realize, we're not so different after all, because we have that common interest.
You said the thing. You said the name of my podcast.
Oh, I did, didn't I?
But
casual name drop.
I mean, at the end of the day, I do what I do, not even because I want viewers, not because I want people to find it. Well, I do want people to find it, but not because I want viewers, not because I want money, not because I want this to be my job. Well, I take that back. I want this to be my job, but that's a different story. I don't want to force it to feel like a job.
Right.
I do it because I want to spread the knowledge that I learned about these prehistoric beasts that, frankly, as much as we know, isn't a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, what, 200 million species alive today, and that's only 1% of all life that has ever been discovered.
Right.
And I'm sure there's even less dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures that have been discovered than modern species.
Exactly. So we're just scratching the surface, really,
So
compared to what could have been in the fossil record.
We probably only know at max 10% of all species to ever exist.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
At best. It's probably
Yeah.
significantly less than that, and I'm over exaggerating it.
Mhm.
But I study these creatures because it's kind of why I was debating whether I should do a Triceratops or a T-Rex video. Because those are the dinosaurs everyone knows about. Those are the dinosaurs that if you say, hey, can you name a dinosaur? It's T-Rex, Triceratops, Stegosaurus. But nobody ever goes Rugops, Alioramus,
Yeah.
Stygimoloch, Dracorex. Nobody ever
Mhm.
looked at those. They're overlooked.
They are.
Even the more well-known ones like Kentrosaurus, Allosaurus, even Apatosaurus a little bit, they get overlooked. And those are the ones that I try to bring into the spotlight, which is why I don't want to say I don't, but that's why I don't have 6 episodes about Triceratops. But I did a Triceratops month where I went over a bunch of ceratopsians like Centrosaurus and Styracosaurus and Camarasaurus. I don't actually think I did Centrosaurus now that I'm thinking about it. I don't know, maybe I did. Just the point. Because I want people to be like, oh, there's T-Rex, but there's other species that are like it under it.
Mhm.
You've got Tarbosaurus, Nanotyrannus, Gorgosaurus, Albertosaurus. Yes. Every species you can name, you could think of. There's another dinosaur that seems like it.
Mhm.
Even as minuscule and random as Microraptor.
I love Microraptor.
I do too. And one of the dinosaurs that I love bringing into the spotlight that nobody ever talks about, that I never hear, and I cannot pronounce the name of it for the love of me, is Epidepopteryx. Epideptyorchorix.
Oh.
I struggle to pronounce the name of it, but
That's a toughie.
Ooh, wow, I do not know how to work a camera. There we go. Just the tail feathers on the back, the long arms, the long fingers for catching insects out of the sky. The fact that it was probably nocturnal. There's so many things that we don't know about these creatures that we still don't know, and we may never know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and people scratch the surface by looking at the 2 or 3 generic species, and I'm okay with that. If it makes people love dinosaurs, then I'm okay with that. That's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I don't want dinosaurs to be politicized. I don't want them to be like a bad thing to where people are shunned for studying it. I want it to be something where it's like you look at it and everybody goes, here is this crazy creature that we don't really know about. What can we figure out about it?
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that just warms my heart whenever somebody's like, if I can get somebody that can talk about other than the basic species of T-Rex or Triceratops, but they talk about something else. Like, I get people love them. They're classics. They're originals. Everybody loves the originals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guilty of it too. The original Jurassic Park, my favorite one by far. You cannot beat it. But that doesn't mean that other dinosaurs shouldn't be put out there.
Right. I agree.
That being said, can we change the name of some of these dinosaurs, please? I have seen too many Nigersaurus jokes.
Oh yeah, I've seen those too. I
And
usually just ignore them.
I do too, and I'm surprised. Here, let's see if I can find it real quick. Nobody has made a joke about. Hang on, trying to add this to the stage. Rapatosaurus, because of the way that looks.
Oh,
Looks. I'm surprised I haven't seen any jokes about that. Because the name looks a little sketch. If
oh,
even
yeah.
I did the episode on it, and before I did it, I sat in my chair for like a solid 25 minutes, and I'm like, should I even do this? Are people going to get mad? But I'm also like, I don't care.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't care. I want somebody to know about this. I don't want it to be some kind of, oh, it's bad name.
Yeah, kind of like a taboo.
Study it again. It's like, screw you, man. I mean, I'm gonna study this. It's so I also looked up how to pronounce this name, and it's Rapatosaurus, and I was like, oh, thank God.
Okay, yeah, that's much better.
Thank God. Because I was very worried about that pronunciation for a while, because I was like,
Yeah, I would be too.
But I figured out that it was Rapatosaurus, like you wrap something, you wrap your toe in lizard. I was like, thank God. You really saved my butt here, but I have to make sure to play it in the episode so nobody could get mad at me. But I'm also like, I don't really care if people hate, because I love it when people are like, oh, go play with your dinosaurs. And I'm like, gladly.
Okay, yeah.
Like, okay.
Excuse me.
I'm gonna head out now. I'm gonna go play with my dinosaurs now. You do whatever you're doing. Because it's also my peace. It's my rest. It's my hobby. I enjoy doing it. If I've had a long day and I'm going to shoot a podcast, or I'll sit down and I'll be writing down one dinosaur. I'll be writing it out. I'll look at the clock. I'm like, oh, 2 minutes passed. I look again, 5 minutes passed. I look again. Oh my gosh, it's been 2 hours.
It slips away from you.
One dinosaur, and I should have done 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, you just get so wrapped up in studying them that you could specialize in one specific dinosaur, and that could actually be what you do for like the rest of your life.
It happens.
I mean, it's personally why I love it. And I feel like if paleontology wasn't a thing, somebody walking in my room would think I'm a sociopath, because I have bones and skulls and model skeletons just around, and they're going to be like, what are you doing? I'm pretty sure Jeffrey Dahmer did the same thing.
Yeah, but the right people will think it's cool.
No, we didn't. We didn't collect prehistoric things. I'm just collecting corpse bits. Don't worry about it. I also saw this one joke where somebody's like, oh, so if you're telling me I collect dead rats, I'm crazy. But if this geologist collects dead lizard bones, then it's a science. And I'm like, he's got a bit of a point. But whatever. I mean, I love this study. It's been my passion since basically ever. So, I mean, the fact that, I mean, some of the stuff I've done episodes on, I've lost count of my episodes at this point. So I'm not going to count because it's too many. Just the things I've collected and hope to keep collecting. And I feel like the ultimate dream for any paleontologist is to open up their own museum.
Yep. I have a few friends that are trying to do that.
I know a few people too. And frankly, that's my end goal too. I want to open up a dinosaur museum.
Well, that would be neat.
Fossils and things everywhere, and I'm just hope I go down the right path to figure out how to do that and meet the right people. Which is why I'm starting early. So
Hey, that's very good that you're making the connections now, and those will be the ones to help you in the long run.
I've already gotten an offer to go to North Carolina to go on an aquatic dinosaur excursion. So
Oh,
that
that's
will be my
nice.
first any kind of fossil excursion, and it's going to be with an aquatic one, which will be very exciting.
Well, that is cool.
But I mean, it's something to be passionate about that, frankly, it's not too confusing.
No.
I mean, you look at paleontology and you look at quantum physics.
Ugh.
There's definitely a confusion gap in there. Paleontology
big
was
one.
like baby work then, but I mean, I don't know how a black hole works, and I don't ever really care to find out. But I will tell you how a Triceratops held its head to kill a T-Rex.
Everyone has their niche.
It's a giant puzzle. And the best part about it, it doesn't come with all the pieces. You get to find the pieces.
It doesn't come with all the pieces, and there's no picture on the box that you can look at.
Nope. And it definitely changes the game. And I mean, I sit here sometimes and I just wonder if we'll ever actually discover every single species.
All we can do is try.
I don't think it's possible, but I think we might as well shoot for it. And that's my goal. So, I mean, paleontology is definitely the route for me. I've had people tell me that it won't work out. And I'm just like, okay, don't got to worry about your opinion because it's not going to help me.
That's right. And it's good that you're sticking with it, because I listened to people like that a long time ago, and I let it stray me from the paleontology path, and it set me back a few years, but now I'm back on it, and it's the best thing I ever did.
Life will beat you down, but as long as you stand back up. And one of my greatest motivations is these creatures in general. Would a dinosaur with an injured leg give up, and roll over and die? No. It would have tried to keep walking. Its leg would have healed. It would hopefully survive. I mean, and that's
hopefully.
That's what I mean. It's massive titans of the past. Some of them not as massive as you think. Some of them not as tiny as you think. I mean, just the range of these creatures is immaculate. You get from these giant sauropods. Like one of my favorite from the PSNO, I think that's the company, is
that sounds right.
Momentousaurus. I love this thing. I love this Momentousaurus.
Oh.
I don't remember the name of it though. Do I still have that box? Yes, I still have that box somewhere. Now rip everything out of the wall, why don't I? What is it? Irma, ER-MA, the Momentousaurus.
Oh, okay.
This is a 1:45 scale, but so I mean it's still got its accuracies, but it's like you get dinosaurs of this immense proportion all the way down to tiny things like Compsognathus.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually just like I used to do dinosaur fight episodes. I probably should bring that back because those were pretty fun to do, and I'd love to do those again.
Maybe you should.
Yeah, but just the small creatures, they each are so uniquely built that they all have their own purpose in their own ecosystem, and I love that about these creatures.
That is very cool, isn't it?
It's why you can say you have a favorite dinosaur, or even just a favorite animal in general, is because they're all so unique to their ecosystem that you're capable of saying it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you don't ever hear anybody going, "What's your favorite bacteria?" Because
I'm sure there is a group of people out there that actually do that.
I'm making fun of them, but you don't hear people, "What's your favorite drywall?"
No, probably not.
I'm sure there's 2 or 3 people max out there who are obsessed with drywall.
There's probably like a group of dads that talks about it weekly.
And one of them heard this episode and they're going to be like, "How dare you talk bad about drywall?"
They're going to come for you after this episode.
But, I mean, you think about not even just dinosaurs, but the mammals that came after them to form humanity that brought humans to human. You think back to like our first ancestors, if you go by that. I mean, there's signs of people hunting Smilodon for sport.
Yeah, that sounds like us.
I mean, there's a lot going on here that we have yet to uncover. And I want to help uncover that.
And that's a really good goal to have.
And while doing that, I also don't want to lose what we already know. Which is part of the reason I decided to start this podcast. I don't want to say express, because I've kind of always expressed the idea of that I love dinosaurs and dinosaurs in general, but express the unknown creatures out there.
Right. Yeah, to put a spotlight on the ones that don't really get out there much.
Because in history, I feel like T-Rex and Triceratops are like the World War II of paleontology.
Yeah.
You can ask any bum on the street about Triceratops, T-Rex, or World War II, and they could give you a fact.
Mm-hmm.
They could tell you something about one of them. But you go up to any normal person and you're like, "Tell me about Epidepopteryx," or like, for an history example, you're like, "The Felician War of this era." They're like, "I have no idea what you mean. What is this?"
Never heard of it.
And then you could just like be like, Epidepopteryx was this tiny creature that lived in the Jurassic. I think it was Jurassic. See, I don't even know myself, and that's why I have my journal here. But it's why I'm so in love with these creatures. It's why it's my goal. I mean, like a rampaging sauropod, I'm gonna run through and do what I need and have fun with it.
Well, good. That sounds like a plan to me.
I also know that you got back from a trip to LA, was it?
Yeah, it was for the Why Dinosaurs premiere.
Oh, well, that's amazing. It all circles back, and
yeah, it's all connected.
You get to see tar pits out there.
Yeah, it was my first time going to the tar pits and the Natural History Museum of LA.
Would you like to talk about those a little bit?
Well, there's not a whole lot for me to talk about because I was busy trying to take pictures of all the dinosaurs and the, the displays and stuff like
Fair
that.
enough.
But the tar pits were cool. I'd never been there before, but a lot of my friends had. I I never realized like how many different types of mammals had died at that place. But it was really cool to actually get to see the tar like bubbling at the surface and see some of their active dig sites. Um, and then at the Natural History Museum, that is probably the best dinosaur exhibit I've ever seen. Um, they had Carnotaurus, Allosaurus, Stegosaurus, and they had different life stages of T Rex. They had a few different ceratopsians on display, a Gallimimus, a Velociraptor. They had a Corythosaurus mounted on the wall, which was
Really?
really neat. They had a fossil of a pregnant plesiosaurus on the wall.
Really?
You can actually see the bones of the baby in there. So that was really neat. And a lot of their mounts used real bones. And a lot of it was kind of Frankenstein with casts and things like that. But
I get that.
a good many of them were real, which was really interesting.
Because there's always a little bit of that puzzle that you gotta make your own piece. Yeah.
But it was really cool. They had a lot of really good stuff in there. I was really impressed.
So, I mean, wow. I mean, I would love to go and see that.
Yeah,
that's
I think
definitely
you'd be like me because I had to borderline be dragged out of there. So
probably. And I know it's random, but if you ever go to Alaska in, oh God, I forget the area. I think it's Anchorage. I want to say it's Anchorage. There is a small museum there
mhm.
with some dinosaurs and fossils and things from Alaska.
Cool.
There's some stuff not from Alaska there too, but there's still some like Alaskan dinosaur stuff there, which is really interesting.
That's awesome.
I'm sure I don't have to tell you about the Denver Natural History Museum.
Yeah, I had a friend who worked there for a little while and she loved it.
The giant T-Rex statue right when you walk in.
Yep.
Also, I was right about Epidopteryx. Epidixipteryx. It was in the Jurassic period. So
oh, good.
Remember. Hey!
Yay, you got it.
I mean, I'm sure you're a busy woman. You got some things to do.
Yeah, I've got plans in less than an hour, unfortunately.
So I guess I'll let you go and deal with all that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.
But thank you so much for having me on here. It's been really nice talking to you.
Thank you for coming on. That was
no problem at all.
That was I always love chatting with people that basically live my dream.
Well, maybe we can have you out with us in Montana sometime and dig up some Jurassic stuff.
That would be amazing. I definitely need to get out there sometime.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to have you.
And I'm definitely going to record most of it.
Hey, that's fine. We've had film crews come out there before, so.
I won't be that professional, but I would love to do it, even just for the experience of it. I mean, having people like you and Dr. Brian Connors and other people as just like trustable contacts is even better. I mean, so thank you so much for coming on and talking to me and talking to everyone who's listening to this about everything. I mean, I hope you have many fruitful finds in the future.
Well, thank you. And thank you again for having me. And you'll see a lot of my my finds on Instagram, so don't worry. And I can send you some information on how you can join us if you'd like to. And you could do an episode about it if you wanted to. So
again, everybody, hang on, I'm trying to pull up your account.
It's okay.
Go check her out. She's the Dinomancer on Instagram. You can't see it, but it actually comes out better whenever I upload it somehow.
Yeah. There it is.
Go check out Sky's content on it's the Dinomancer, like necromancer, because they deal with dead things.
Yep.
Paleontologists do too. Woo! Go check her content out. She's got a lot of it, and it's really amazing. So please go check her out on Instagram. But I guess I'll let you be on your way.
All right. Well, again, thank you for having me, and hope everyone has a great day.
You too. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.
Bye.
That was Skywalker with the Dinomancer. Thank you so much for coming on this show and talking with us for almost 3 hours. A lot of great conversation there. I mean, I love talking to her. I mean, that was a lot of information, so I'm definitely going to go back and rewatch this a couple times. And please go check her content out. And while you're at it, go check out my channel, Prehistoric Life Podcast, on Instagram too. That's where you find all of my extra content. Remember to go also check out my YouTube channel, which is where I usually do early uploads and things like that. The premiere is for the interview with the Hell Creek Hooligans is definitely coming out at the time I'm recording this tomorrow, but 11/13/23, so that would be what, Monday the 13th of November. So please go check that out at 11:30. Why am I saying this? This episode's coming out after, so whatever. But that will be out, so go check that out too. I'll definitely link that for the people on YouTube. Go check out my interview with the Fossil Cowboy and Sergey and Jason and all of them. But Sky, thank you so much for coming on the show. I love talking to you. I love soaking up the knowledge of these paleontologists that live my dream. And as you can see, most of my tabs open are of dinosaur content. And here is the website. From there, you can get to the Prehistoric Life Podcast Instagram page and YouTube. So please go check all of that out. And thank you so much. Remember, go follow the Dinomancer on YouTube. She's probably on Instagram too, or not YouTube, on Instagram. Go check her out on Instagram. She's probably on TikTok and maybe on YouTube, but she's probably on TikTok too. So go check her out. I hope to bring her back on the show, but thank you so much, Sky, for coming on the show. It was great talking to you, but till next time, I'm your host, Eric Crawford. I will see you all next time for another episode of Prehistoric Life Podcast. Remember, keep it prehistoric. Goodbye.